Welcome to the Contrarians, and yeah, you heard it. We are live. I've got Martin Popoff here, and I've got a special guest. Well, we have a special guest. We have Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation here tonight, and we are going to have a general discussion. The topic for tonight: what's an album you bought as a kid just because of the album cover? We want to hear from you. We want to keep it interactive. We want to keep it light. Let's just have a discussion. But Martin's has his picks. I have my picks. Peter Kerr has his picks. So we're just gonna let's just see what happens. So welcome, gentlemen. I'm glad you guys are here, of course.
Yes.
We couldn't do it without Peter Kerr, for crying out loud.
No, good to be here.
Martin, do you want to start us off?
Absolutely, sure. So we're gonna go, around. We've got 5 each examples.
Yep. We're just gonna go round and round
backups, but I'm gonna start chronologically, and all of this is gonna end up into the 70s, into the early 80s. But I'm going right back and trying from memory to when, like, the purest, most distilled version of this, and I would say I would have been I would have been 10 years old, and there's a few albums that qualify, but I'm going to start with kind of the fails, the fail category, where, so here we go. Mott the Hoople Mott. This is Mott. Yeah, and this and the live album. My buddy bought the live album as well. So the idea here is, at 10 years old in 1973, we were already like raging metalheads. It had to be metal. Everything else didn't count, sort of thing. So you would look at the album covers, and you look how rocking these guys look, and the light, and Ian Hunter with the glasses on and stuff, right? And I remember thinking, the name of the band's kind of silly, Mott the Hoople. What does that mean? But it looks kind of heavy. But you get it, and it's kind of like warmed over, slightly heavy Rolling Stones. It was a glam band. So this was essentially a fail. We failed when we bought this. We failed when we bought the live album with the dolls or whatever, marionette, the crazy looking live shot on the cover. And it was the same sort of thing. And just as backup, just to zoom forward a few years, I distinctly remember being on one of our family vacations and actually being in Boston and buying the Thunder Train album on white vinyl, 1977, thinking, wow, that looks heavy. And look at the band on the back. They look like complete degenerate rockers. This is Mock Bell before he's in the Joe Perry Project, right? And this, finish the family vacation, get home to BC, and play this, and lo and behold, it's also kind of like warmed over Rolling Stones, and it was a little sort of retro and just not very heavy. And then just finally in that category, REO Speedwagon is the band we always used to joke about, that we always got ripped off on. We'd look at it, there'd be like 7, 12, 15 guys in the band. They all had long hair, and you thought, this thing's got to be heavy. Speedwagon, speed metal, all that kind of thing. So I remember fails early on, but then thinking, okay, they got to be heavy with this album cover. I mean, look at it. They're all in black, and this, this definitely looks heavy. No, it wasn't heavy. It was a little heavier than usual, but this was a fail too. So this was a waste of our $4.99 as well. So that's my first round. That's the fail category.
All right, excellent. Peter Kerr,
I'm not going to go
over to you.
Yeah, no worries. I'm not going to go by category of fail, but I'll just go by category of album covers that I gravitated to. So one of the joys of being a kid was going to the record store, and I would just spend hours and hours perusing album covers. I just loved it. And this is in the days where they just had the sleeves in the various trays. You'd actually have to purchase to get the backs, the inner sleeves, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. So a buddy we went to a record store, I think in probably 1983. I hadn't got into hard rock or heavy metal, and we were perusing the letters U and the letters W. So in one hand, I had Uriah Heep, Innocent Victim, which had a snake, and you could actually see in the mouth of the snake. And in the other hand, I had this little number, White Snake, Come and Get It.
Oh.
So I was familiar with Deep Purple. I actually got turned on to Deep Purple with, I think it was Deepest Purple. Loved it to bits. The thing that I gravitated to this album above Innocent Victim was David Coverdale, and there was a Deep Purple connection, because if you look at this, you've got David Coverdale. See, look at those sultry looks he's looking at.
Oh, yeah.
John Lord, and then you've got Ian Pace and Bernie Marsden and Mick Moody. And that set me off on a journey of being an absolute Whitesnake tragic. I've loved them to this very day. I had to collect everything possible about Deep Purple. Does the album cover match the music? Probably not. It's very bluesy. It's very sort of more hard rock. It's nothing like what you would expect, like an Iron Maiden or a crunching, gallopy heavy metal album. But it's the voice, the David Coverdale vocals that got me in. Wine, Women in Song, Lonely Days, Lonely Nights, Don't Break My Heart Again. I just absolutely loved it. And I'm a Whitesnake tragic to this very day. And this is my favorite album of them. And it set me off on that journey. So Whitesnake, come and get it. And it actually was my entry point to hard rock and heavy metal. And many more purchases just based on the aesthetics, but I'll reveal them as we go through the show. But that was my first entry into hard rock and heavy metal.
Excellent. Well, let's look at some comments here. We've got DJ Dio, Rat Invasion of Your Privacy. Oh, yeah. Well, there you go. Well, let us know in the comments what was it about that record? Well, I can probably imagine that, but I've got the promo poster over here. Merciful Fate, don't break the oath. That yellow cover with the evil guy pointing at me freaked me out.
For sure.
I don't know. Yeah. That's a good one. Oh, here we go. John Clauser, the first of, John. We know John Clauser. Of course, it's going to be Wasp. Mm-hmm. First Wasp album, Impaler's Rise of the Mutants. My, look at all these. Crazy. All right, we're going to keep going. We will come back to your comments, and we're bringing you all in on this. So let me go to what let me get rid of that comment, because I've got to click all these buttons because I'm running the show and I'm clicking. So you got to bear with me. So I'm going to go back to, we're going back a long time. But if you guys, my pick, now you guys are going Tom Petty and the Heartbreak. Okay, let me frame this up. Me being a big Beatles guy, the Beatles played Rickenbackers. When I was a kid, there was a record store. I don't know if they had these in Canada. Did they have Peaches Records up in Canada, or was that just in the U.S.?
No, we had a lot of the different chains, but the chains kept fairly separate, I think, between the two countries.
So when I was a kid, we had a chain, and I'm sure people in the comments can come in on this. Peaches they had a great import section. They had these big murals that they put on the wall where they were all airbrushed. Now, when I was a kid, impressionable, I never heard Tom Petty, but they had these giant murals that they would put out front. And here's Tom Petty playing a Rickenbacker 12-string. Now, me being Beatle crazy and Rickenbacker crazy, if no one knows that, freaking love Rickenbackers. I'm crazy. I'm looking at this album cover going, oh my God, look at this guy. How cool is he? And I just picked it up. And I was just captivated by the guitar thing. It's very simple. And then I look at the back, and everybody's playing guitars, and I don't know. I just bought it, went with it. It all depends upon the way you're brought up and what you like. But I was totally captivated by this album cover, and I just picked it up. Thank God I like the record. So there you go, kids.
Yeah.
It's one red album cover, isn't it? It's all red.
It's all red.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Here we go. Love Moth the Hoop. Oh yeah.
I try all the time. I try regularly to like Mott the Hoople, and I just
Star
don't really get into
Star
it.
remembers when Peaches. Yes, Star. You remember Peaches? I'm sure Star has been there many times.
I got a little Peaches crate, as a little collectible, like a little tiny one.
Oh, I've got like 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. We had a Peaches back in the day in Dayton. John the Dark. Oh, yeah, John. Yeah. There was a Peaches in Dayton, Cleveland. They were all over. But, those days are gone. All right, let's throw it over to Martin. Martin, what's your next one?
I just got to say something about Tom Petty. I always remember as a kid, there's a few of these bands, and then later on as well, where you don't think about them very much. There's no internet, and you get things confused. And I thought, George Thorogood kind of looks like Pat Travers. And, I would get them sort of mixed up, right? Although, I was a fan pretty early on. But then you think of all the Jesus bands later, Jesus Lizard, Jesus Jones. And Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, I always had that cognitive dissonance because we always knew of Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers, right? And you always thought in the back of your mind, is this some of the same guys? Is it supposed to be the same backing band or something? I don't know. But that's a cool one. So, okay. So my next one is going up to 1975 for this and the backup example, but pretty sure that this was my first Blue Oyster Cult album, the Blue Oyster Cult live album, On Your Feet and On Your Knees. And you look at that, you got cult in the name. This was the time of the cults. Cults just freaked out every little kid, back in the 70s sort of thing. And that silver heavy metal logo like that, I don't know how many times I drew that on my books, right? And then On Your Feet or On Your Knees, it's the golden era of the live albums. You got the car with the flag, white with red on it. Just everything about that was so sinister looking, right? It's a double live album. You flip it over, you've got the gloves holding the sacred text there. And then you look at the song titles and you got Subhuman, Harvester of Eyes, Hot Rails to Hell. It's like for sure this was going to be heavy. And, it was pretty heavy, but it wasn't crazy heavy, right? I mean, it was pretty good for its day. So that's one that definitely that cover would suck you in. And that was the case with a lot of Blue Oyster Cult because Blue Oyster Cult was really good with the covers. But here's just one backup for 1975, the Armageddon album, same kind of thing.
Keith Ralph.
You would look at that. Yep. You would look at that. You look at the logo. It's really doomy Armageddon, the picture of the guys. There's 4 long-haired guys. So that's your first clue. So same thing, Peter, you're in the store, you got your allowance money. What do you do, right? It's $4.99, $6.99, $3.99. Maybe there's a delete bin. But then I remember flipping this over and seeing, I don't know, man, 3 songs on side 1, 2 songs on side 2. None of them sound particularly heavy. They just sound kind of like spacey. You got Buzzard, Silver Tightrope, Paths and Planes, and Future Gains. So you would peruse the song titles, see how violent they sounded, right? And decide from there. And this one had a little bit of liner notes with some history of the guys. I don't think it made them just come out so heavy sounding. Yeah, Steamhammer, right? So one of the guys was in Steamhammer. We always thought those guys got to be a heavy band, right? So there you go. They're 75. So here you are. We're 12 years old at this point, moving on from 10, but now you're in there taking what we would call as kids a risk. You're going to take a risk on that. So that was the word we used. Time to do a risk, right? So yeah, all my choices are, we don't know these bands.
Yeah, that's what everybody has tonight. Star Peter's Angel on Earth as it is in heaven. Oh look at you, Star. Wow.
Yeah.
Is Brett going to show up tonight, Star? I'm just throwing that out there. All right, let's here we go. Jake goes Love Hunter Whitesnake.
Oh, well, that's the grand.
That on my book.
That's the most lurid album cover of their whole of their discography. Excellent. Very controversial.
Very controversial.
Don't know if it's PC.
Well, we won't show it on here. We're a family channel. All right, Peter Kerr.
All right.
What's next?
Getting into hard rock and metal, you gravitate to the aesthetics of album covers, especially the more lurid album covers, and keeping it in the Deep Purple family. I purchased this, Rainbows Straight Between the Eyes. I think it's a wonderful album cover. You've got the strap going straight between the eyes. You look at the eyes and you can actually see a rainbow. I've got there you go. It's just a well-drawn album cover. And then you've got the mysterious eyes of the band, Joe Lynn Turner, Roger Glover and the folk, Richie Blackmore. Bit of a disconnect when you play it. Okay, Death Valley Driver. It's a bit of a highway star. It rollicks along. It's got that neoclassical feel. But then the rest of the album goes into foreigner territory and it's very American-orientated rock. And I remember at the time I was a little disappointed because you look at this looks like a punchy heavy metal album. It's going to be in your face. And then you get some balladry and you get some very commercial radio-friendly rock. This was what I rated a bit of a fail in the day, but over time, and your tastes change, I rank this very highly as one of the better Rainbow albums. So I've actually reassessed my opinion, and I actually rate this as one of Joe Lynn Turner's greatest Rainbow albums. Yeah, it's really nicely polished AOR, but in the time there was a disappointment because what I saw here and what I heard, there was a disconnect. And there's a lot of albums out there. Another example, I think there was a disconnect, was Abominog, Uriah Heep. I know that's one of your favorites, Martin. You look at the album cover and you think it's going to sound like Bathory or one of those Swedish death metal bands, but it's delicious AOR. So I put that in the similar camp. But anyway, that's my selection. Excellent. Rainbow straight between the eyes.
Great choice, Peter. Patriot Pizza Man. I bought a lot of albums in the 80s based solely on the cover. White Wolf, Grim Reaper, Gravedigger, Fifth Angel. Man, he's got quite a few. Annihilator, Alice in Hell. Yep. Marlon, Cold Stone is, it's a classic, Marlon. That is a classic track. They still play that on FM rock radio around here, so we hear it fairly, often. It's a classic. All right, well, let's see here, kids. Well, my next one, I've got an interesting story. Well, I guess it's not. I don't know if it's interesting, but my next choice is Styx Grand Illusion. When I was in middle school, I had an art teacher, Mrs. Close. Don't ask me why I know that still, but she had this in art class. She would show this album cover to the class. Now I'm looking at the album cover. I'm going, wow, that's cool. And you look at the back, you got Tommy Shaw looking great. The band looks great on the back. And that was my gateway entry drug into Styx. So we didn't play it. She was just like using it as like a prop for something and we were like we were actually going to do something like the cover. So, but eventually I was so taken by it. I went to Music Land in beautiful Marion, Ohio, and picked the record up, and I was hooked ever since. But you never know how you're going to get turned on to these things. It could be through friends. It could be through school. This happened in middle school art class, for crying out loud. But I love this record. Of course, it's many people's favorite Styx album. We know how that works. Great record, but I was captivated by the cover, and I thought the band looked okay. I was always captivated by Tommy Shaw. I always thought Tommy Shaw looked so cool, and still do, even though he looks like Jesus now. But that's a different thing. But let's see if we got any comments before we throw it over to. Here we go. One of my favorite Richie Blackmore guitar solos, David Bontis. I agree completely on Joe Lynn Turner era Rainbow. For years I avoided, but recently they've grown on me. Yeah. Here's one. And Clash London Calling. I'm surprised Martin didn't bring that up. I don't think that's in his list.
But Martin probably
I knew about the
Clash,
right?
He already knew about him
already, right? Yeah. So
yeah. See, that would go against all the rules.
That's actually going to fit. I'll mention it when I get to one of my themes here. But
all right, Martin, let's throw it over to you.
All right. So I'll just mention a quick school thing. In grade 4, Ms. Tavaroli's class, you could either do show and tell or DJ. And I would play Black Sabbath Volume 4 in grade 4.
And all the kids would sit there and go, what?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So my next theme is it came from Canada. So I remember getting this as a new release, Tease on the Loose, 1977. So I was 14 years old, right? And again, you show up, you look at the racks. So you pick this up out of the racks and you go, oh, gatefold. That's fancy. They must be somebody, right? You see that logo and you go, okay, so even in 1977, when you made a logo like that, you were kind of making a little bit of a hard rock statement, right? The pointier the logo, the more, chances are you've got a hard rock band. And then you've got this band rocking out, right? I mean, look at the drummer there. He's pounding away in this huge kit. This looks like it's got to be heavy, right? But you still were never sure, right? Flip it over. You look at the song titles. And so there's no instruments here. That's the other thing. You would look at the instruments and see how many how many flutes and pianos and horn sections and strings there were, and then put it back if you saw any of that stuff. But I looked at the song titles, and you're thinking, okay, On the Loose, but most of these are pretty, gonna have a good time tonight, Stay Here, Ready to Move, Sweet Misery, Never Again. Whole bunch of boring words, right? You guys know I did a book on Angel, right? And this revelation came to me after a while. I went, hey, a small reason Angel didn't do very well is they used a lot of short, boring words in all their song titles. They didn't have flashy song titles. So this kind of bothered me, right? There's one song in here called Lady Killer. So I remember thinking, Virgin Killer, Scorpions kind of thing. Anyways, this worked out because it is a good hard rock and heavy album for 1977 from a Canadian band. But in Canada, we also had things like this, Hellfield. Look at that. This is also like 78. Wow. Look at the guys on the back. So yeah, this was a risk that you would buy. And no, it wasn't heavy. We had
you need to wear sunglasses for that.
Yeah, that's a good cover, though. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I mean, look at it, right? And we had The Hunt, Back from the Hunt and this clawing thing. We had Mad Cats. I remember Queen City Kids. So there were a bunch of them. The H bands, Hammersmith, which was a band that I actually saw live, but it's called Hammersmith. They've got this album called It's For You, and one of the guys has a flying V, and the other one's got, this stone carving. So again, I remember, because we are in Canada, even bands that weren't on super big labels, likely they would get the distribution across Canada. So you would get pretty much anything Canadian would show up in your local record store in a small town, right? So yeah, I remember getting all of those and being burned, right? They didn't turn out very good. So that's in the fail category for Canada, but Tease succeeded in the fail category, or in the Canadian category.
Excellent. So Patriot Pizza Man, that was his first Uriah Heep album, Peter. I got it because I thought the cover would give my sister nightmares. She was terrible. Well, I could get that. You want to torment your sister. She was terrified of that thing. I guess I should have played it for her first. Yeah. We got Marco in the chat. He said, "Rest in peace, Ken Kelly."
Yeah, I met absolutely. Him. Nice guy, super nice guy. Got him to sign my love gun and my rainbow. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Kilroy. Speaking of looking like Jesus, surprised no Hugh Simon Rush entries. Well, you don't know yet. It's a little early, Kilroy. You calm down. We'll see what happens. Thunder and Lightning by Thin Lizzy, just by the cover, you knew it was going to be heavy. Yep. Herb Alpert. Who would ever think that Herb Alpert would be mentioned on the Contrarians? But
I know that album cover. That's a little bit naughty.
Cover. And Soul Asylum sent it up, right? Soul Asylum did a repeat of it for one of their EPs.
Yeah.
Yes.
They called something and Other Delights as well, right?
Yeah, Kiss Alive. I have to agree. That's a great.
That's
cover.
an
I did not
album
pick
cover
that because it was hard to. I knew all about them before that, but that's a good one. All right.
Yep.
All right, Peter. Let's throw it over to you. What's your next one?
Right. So I'm getting deeper into hard rock, heavy metal, and I'm going into glam and anything that looks a little bit salacious, a little bit out there, a little bit weird. I'm gravitating to. So I bring up this little comment. So when you bring that comment down, I'll bring it up.
Yeah, it all helps if I
there
click
you go.
the right button.
Madam X. Wow. This I didn't know anything about. Didn't know any of their songs. It was purely on the aesthetics of what I'm seeing, of what they look, and they just look totally out there. And I would have to put this in the category of fail because it's bubblegum metal. It was very sort of substandard Motley Crue, had that sort of very Tommy Lee sounding drum sound. A lot of the songs were very, I think, high school. We reserved the right to rock, very much in that theme of a Twisted Sister or a B-grade Quiet Riot. So it was definitely a bit of a disappointment, and it didn't match this because when you look at this just looks so out there and so outrageous. And when you play it, it's a little tame and a little bit conservative. So image was everything. And yeah, that's a disappointment. I played it like about a year ago. Yeah, it's kind of cute, but it hasn't aged well. So,
well, I was just going to throw out, Peter,
Madam
that
X.
album's fairly obscure here in the States now. How did you? They had that over in Australia promoting it, or how did you come about it? It was just in the racks.
It's on Jet Records. It was mainstream, and a lot of record stores had categories where they had a bin, and it was the heavy metal section. So they would actually dedicate albums that were in the genre of heavy metal, and they would throw all different types of metal, whether it was hard rock, thrash, in one bucket, and this was one of them. So, yeah.
So, Madam X or Vixen? I'm just going to throw that out.
I'm not really familiar with Vixen. I know that a couple of the hits, but yeah, no. A little bit of trivia. I believe Sebastian Bach was in this band for a nanosecond as well. So in one of the later versions of Madam X.
Oh,
Martin,
look.
what do you think of Madam X?
Flash G gave us a dono. All right, we got $2.20
Nice.
Canadian. Hey, Flash G, thank you so much. If anybody feels like throwing us a dono, we appreciate it because we want to do more of this. We want, we're here for you. You give us ideas, we might cover it. And thanks, Flash G. We thank you so much. So, Tigers.
Yes, thanks, Flash. We've got some tigers coming up later. So,
Praying Mantis. Look at that. Flash is all over it. All right, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. Mike LaDonna, I always knew at least one song. My mom loved, of course your mom did. She had that one and 5 others. Well, back in the day, they were popular. Axis Bolt of Love, Jimi Hendrix back in 68 because the cover first Hendrix. I saw the debut and got it. The other Hendrix fan since. Oh, awesome. All right. So let's go to we'll go to me. Now this, I really had to think about it. And this is kind of, I'm not saying it's controversial, but when you're a kid, buying this record and sneaking it into my house, that's something. I'm going to go with, believe it or not, the Sex Pistols, never mind the Bullocks, 1977. I probably got this like 78, roughly there. A buddy and I were at Musicland at the mall in Southland Mall in Marion, Ohio, and they had this there, believe it or not. Small Marion, Ohio. And there's something to do with, what is that? It's kind of, questionable. Can I get this into the house? But yeah, believe it or not, we bought the Sex Pistols. He bought one and I bought one. And the beauty of it was a great record, but it was kind of controversial at the time. And in our small teenage minds, it was kind of risky. So luckily it was a great record, and that's my choice. So nice. There you go. All right, Martin Popoff, let's throw it over to you. What do you?
Yeah, I like that pick because I'm going to talk about punk. But that record, just a bit of a story, is we knew about the Sex Pistols, so I couldn't pick that pick. But my original, I wish I still had it. I bought a UK version of that when it first came out in '77. So it was a yellow cover. And then when I ended up getting this one with the pink cover, in Canada at least, I can't remember what it is in the States, but it added a song. It added Submission to it, which wasn't on the UK one. It's kind of like the whole Green Man Alicia added on to Hellbent for Leather thing. So, but yes, in this punk category, Dead Boys, Young, Loud, and Snotty. So, the name of the band is Dead Boys. If you got that kind of a font, you knew you were in for some chaotic, crazy punk rock. So 14 years old, we were loving this punk rock stuff when it came out. The name of the album is Young, Loud, and Snotty. Look at those guys. They look really mean. On the back, they look even meaner. So, anything that you thought was punky at that time, it's got a song called Sonic Reducer. I mean, most of the song titles don't sound that great, but there is High Tension Wire and Down in Flames. The names of the guys mattered as well. Cheetah Chrome, Johnny Blitz. So it sounded like it was going to be good, violent punk. And it was. This turned out to be really heavy. I always call this album the mean median average of punk rock, because it's almost like an AI version of a punk rock band, or something made up in a a boardroom, even though it's not. They were from Cleveland originally, and they moved and spent most of their time, hanging around CBGBs. But so that's one. But it's funny in the fail category. I always thought that I think it's the first Generation X album cover looks so incredibly punk rock. The one where they're kind of backlit and it's really orange and it's the guys looking really menacing. And that was a complete turd. It was just not heavy. It was almost like a little heavier than a Blondie album, right? So sometimes the punk thing failed. And I thought I'd just mention one more. This is a little later into punk rock. I think it's 79. Wow. So this is the second Lurkers album, but it was the same sort of thing. I knew nothing about the Lurkers, but I definitely knew at that point, 79, it's like, now post-punk is around and you had less of a chance of getting a good heavy punk album at this point. And so you'd look at those unassuming blokes. But fortunately, this turned out to be a good heavy punk album. I always loved that back cover too, really artistic. But I remember getting, I believe I got God's Lonely Men and Fulham Fallout, the debut at the same time. But yeah, you look at these song titles, they didn't sound very heavy. It did have a cyanide on it. But yeah, the other thing you when you got a punk album, you felt better about your risk if it had lots of songs. So usually short songs would turn out to be heavy. So and I'll just mention the Clash as well. Kind of knew about the Clash anyways, knew what we were in for when that thing came to town. But I bought, my original Canadian copy of the Clash with the green cover rather than the blue cover. But that looked really punk. And if you were, we were pretty not happy with the Clash because it wasn't quite heavy enough, certainly compared to that album cover. That album cover looked as punk as the Dead Boys album cover. So there you go. There's your
So Martin, I'm curious. You were raised in a small town, right?
Yep.
I mean, how did you get all your music info, and how did you find out about anything? Oh, I mean, it was just going to the record store, just happened to hear something. I'm just curious.
So we had a town of 10,000 people, but we had 3-4 good record stores. So that's number one. We always had a supply of Circus Cream and Hit Parader. That's number two. And then we would go to Spokane, Washington every once in a while on family trips, pilgrimages, which is directly 2 hours and 15 minutes south of Trail. Trail was right on the border, and it had the most awesome head shops. It had Eucalyptus, and our favorites were Strawberry Jams and Magic Mushrooms, which were the head shop places that had new American music, records, a big used album supply, and imports. So most of these things we bought at that time, you would try to get up to 4 or 5 albums at a time kind of thing if you were going on one of these trips. So yeah, a lot of supply. And then Vancouver was 7 hours, 8 hours actually directly to the coast, but Vancouver had a lot of good stores too.
Here we go. AZDH has given some love to the Plasmatics. New Hope for the Wrenched. The album with Wendy O. Williams. I think I've got that on CD. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
But it's a great record. It was one of those ones that my buddy had. He had the record. He had a bunch of great stuff. XTC, Plasmatics, Rush Moving Pictures. He turned me on to a lot of stuff back in the day. But I just remember that Plasmatics record thinking, what is this? But yeah, that is definitely an eye catcher. I will give you that. All right, Peter, let's throw it over to you. What you got?
I just wanted to do a quick segue from Martin.
Sure.
Like in the 70s and 80s, people forget how many record stores were actually even in the suburbs. Right. There would be like 5 or 6 record stores, and I kind of really miss those days. Like the only record stores in Australia or in Sydney are in the big cities, or in the major certain sort of city areas. So I sort of miss those days. All right, the next one I'm going to do, I didn't know anything about this band. I didn't know anything about the actual lead guitarist. Was familiar with Kiss, giving you a clue. I'm talking about Vinnie Vincent Invasion. So this album cover, it looks like it just, it's something like science fiction. You've got the logo that's just jumping at you. But this is not the actual album cover didn't sell it to me on the aesthetics. It was actually, what the hell is this? You look at Vinnie Vincent. You look at all the different characters. There's Robert Fleischman. You couldn't believe he was in Journey.
He looks like he's a new wave guy.
He looks like he just came out of the Romantics.
Yeah.
But that was what sold me. And you look at all the album titles, you know, Boys Want to Rock, and boys are spelt with a Z. Do you want to make love, Back on the Streets, or Want to Be Your Victim? I'm a contrarian. I will defend Vinnie Vincent because this album is so over the top. It is just a shredathon. It is so over the top in regards to the guitar work, overplaying, that it's almost genius in a dumb sort of way. And I played this album a lot. And this one was clearly a thumbs up and a winner. And where the outrageous, the aesthetics of what this band looked like and the song titles actually did match, the material. And I play it to this very day. Vinnie Vincent's a highly controversial figure. Apparently he's going to do an album sometime this year, if it ever gets out. He introduced the lead singer, and that was only for a week, and then he withdrew the offer. And it's just an absolute schmozzle, anything that he does. I mean, I think there was a listening party where people had to pay $500 to listen to the album. That's one hell of an expensive album listening party. But anyway, I still play this a hell of a lot. It's just over the top. And, guitar work is supposed to service the song. Well, it's actually the song service the guitar playing. If you like shredding and if you like outros that go on and on and on, then this is for you. It's just so over the top. And I think it's borderline genius, Vinnie Vincent's Invasion.
Peter, borderline genius. Well,
I can't explain it. I
have to give you my thoughts, and I'm going to throw it over to Martin to get his thoughts, because Vinnie Vincent is controversial. I'm looking at time. We're okay. When I first heard this record, my buddies, we all play guitar, blah, 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 blah. Now, Vinnie never played like this on any Kiss album. To me, I heard it, and I thought, well, this guy is definitely speeding things up. He's not playing this fast, because it would just seem so... I just didn't. And Peter, if you love this record, bless you. I'm just saying, but I still listen to his playing thinking this can't be real. He didn't play like this in Kiss. It just sounds like he's sped up his guitar players. Anybody in the chat, please chime in. I'm interested to know. We're all interested to know what you think. But Martin, what did you think when you first heard this record?
I thought it was really good. It's definitely over the top. It's just, to me though, I remember thinking it was just another one on the pile. It was fine, competent. Yes, a lot of guitar playing, but never, I guess I looked at the band and probably knocked it down a point or two because of that. But the other one was good too. Freely's, I always put them together with Freely's Comet sort of thing as well. And then of course Slaughter. I mean, Mark Slaughter. I loved Slaughter. I was a contrarian with that band because you were supposed to really make fun of Slaughter, but I loved that really screechy, weird kind of production that they had, which carried over to the Baby Slaughter, Kick Tracy, and the sort of chaotic who-ness, Van Halen-ness of that band. Like they just seemed, again, Peter, the idea of over the top. Slaughter seemed to be over the top in another way of like. It sounded like basically Van Halen, Women and Children First in a late hair metal period.
So I'm going to throw it. Marco is in here. He said there's a live concert video of Vinnie Vincent one in Toronto. So I've never seen the video. Maybe Peter's seen it. Martin may have seen it. Does Vinnie bring it? I mean,
he can shred. He can shred. And I've heard this school of thought where there's been rumors that he actually sped it up in the studio.
That's what we thought. Yeah.
But he can shred. But I'll share this little story, and I've said this a few times. People have actually heard Vinnie, playing Jeff Beck licks, just like Jeff Beck. He's got the tone, he's got the licks. And people have actually come up to him and say, why don't you play like that? But he had this obsession, I've just got to play faster. And there's rumors that on that album, he actually did 500 takes on a guitar solo again and again. He's got this sort of perfectionist gene in him. And I don't know, that's probably to the detriment of the music and to the detriment of himself.
Well, there you go.
But he had this obsession that he just wanted to play faster and faster because, you hear the Kiss material. It's he doesn't play like that.
Right.
He services the song. But I think in Kiss, he had Paul and Gene, and they wouldn't have any nonsense. And I think they were very strong personalities, and they just told him, this is what you play, Vinnie. And he played within those parameters. But when he was playing in that band, Keys to the Kingdom, he just went loose.
Hey, Nick, don't bring up Vinnie's wig. All right. Let's not
That was Robert Fleischman.
So anyway, well, no, seriously, I'm not trying to rag on Vinnie, but at least you said it straight. Because like I said, when we were kids, I thought, well, that's not the way he plays. All right, let's go to the next thing. And I guess I'm up. Here's another one. I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah. This was a great one, kids, because when you're young and impressionable, this record, we're talking, this must've been 78. Cause this is when really things started taking off for me when I was like 12, 13. Dig this. Queen, News of the World. I had no idea who Queen was. Well, I'm in a small town in Ohio. They didn't play anything like this. But when I saw this album cover, come on. Give me a better album cover from 1977 than this. This is cool. And then when you open it up, everybody's falling out of the robot's hands. And if you look at all the other Queen albums, this just seems kind of out of the ordinary. But this is probably my favorite Queen album because, it's like the gateway drug. It's like my first Queen album I ever heard. I look at the cover, you open up that gatefold and, it's got that sleeve with all the lyrics and the band photos. I love it. Freaking love this record. But I just took a chance, saw it at Twin Fair in Marion, Ohio. And same kind of story. My buddy and I were there and we were just going through records and saw this. It popped up and we went, whoa. I don't know. It's a classic. As far as I'm concerned, it's a classic. So I'll leave it at that. See whatever comments. Okay, here we go. News of the World cover scared the hell out of me as a kid. Analog Kid. Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, did Vinnie get MTV play? I think they played Vinnie on MTV.
Yeah.
Analog, amazing album. It's a great album cover. Oh, I love that album cover. Here we got David Lee Roth, Eat 'Em and Smile. I knew who Roth was, but never heard anything from his new band. There you go. Analog Kid, it was scary. Well, it depends on what age you are and when you come into it. Me, I was like in middle school. It was okay. I thought it was cool. So, News of the World is a masterpiece. Cover and music, probably their best album cover. It certainly makes you do a double take. I will leave it at that. All right, gentlemen, let's throw it over to Martin. Martin, what's your next one?
Just want to talk about Queen for a second. So I've never really thought about this, and I've never said this before. But you bring up Queen, and I was thinking, well, what was my first time thinking about Queen? So it was the debut. So 1973 would have been 10 years old, or the next year, I don't know. Maybe I was 11. Maybe it was 74. But looking at the back and the front of Queen 1, I remember now thinking, okay, so they've got the most authoritative name that no one's ever thought of. Are you even allowed to call yourself Queen if you're from England? They must be special to call themselves Queen. It's like they must have had some sort of, permission from royalty to call themselves Queen. So you turn it over, and I remember us thinking, boy, these guys must be really good because look how rich they are. They looked so aristocratic in their fancy clothes and sitting around and looking super elegant, right? Not glam. They didn't look like freaks. They didn't look like Sweet or Mud or Slade or anything. They looked really aristocratic, right? So I remember looking at this thinking, everything about this is special. I know it's a first album, but it's called Queen, and look at them. Like these guys are obviously on some exalted plane. This is going to be special. And of course, it's one of the greatest debut albums of all time, and it was special. And they sounded like it was their 10th album. I mean, it sounded like not like a baby band at all. They did sound like one of the greatest bands in the world right out of the gate. So that's a funny one. So that collage of all those little shots of these guys living this glamorous life, you know, we thought, wow. So obviously these guys have a ton of money. They must be huge rock stars already. And they're going to make a great record, and they did. So
there you go.
All right. Moving on to my my last example. So there's a subtle shift where you would take a risk in the new wave of British heavy metal. So we've got Tigers of Pantang, Wildcat here. So you would take a risk in the new wave of British heavy metal, but just like our good buddy Eddie there, you know, what was on the tin was telling you what was on the inside at this point, because there was now an actual metal movement. There were songs about metal. There was a metal way to dress because of Judas Priest and Motorhead, right? There were monsters and logos, and everything looked really cool and violent. So I remember getting this, not really knowing who Tigers of Pantang was. So I don't recall having any singles or anything, but seeing that. So this was sort of the rise of great heavy metal illustration as well. So 1980, and then you turn it over and just the coolest live shots of these guys, right? You know, you look at Jez Cox there with his leg up like that, looking absolutely like a punk rock star, right? The drummer there, and you know, so this looked totally heavy. You got songs like Euthanasia, Slave to Freedom, Money, Killers, Fire Clown, Wildcats again with the Z, you know, or Z, you know, this is the clue that you're in heavy metal world, right? Susie Smile, Badger, Insanity. You know, you got the bass player's name is Rocky, so he's got one name, so there's a clue that you're in a heavy metal world. So this turned out great. And then, of course, they follow up with more great heavy metal illustration and looking like absolutely like that can't be anything but heavy metal. You got John Sykes in there as well, right? And then, you know, the third album gave you Crazy Nights. So same sort of thing. You just knew that was a heavy metal band when you looked at it. But you didn't always win. You know, there were albums that didn't turn out very good. I remember the Dark Heart album was disappointed with that. There was Wolf. There was Praying Mantis was too mellow. White Spirit was kind of too mellow for us. The second Witchfind album looks heavy as hell, but it wasn't very heavy. The first one was heavier. Gaskin was not that great. Fist was not that great. But they were all roughly operating in the heavy metal world. Even Demon. Demon's a great example of amazing album covers for the debut and The Unexpected Guest. Scary as hell, right? With that blue demon on the front and then the old pictures on the inside. And it didn't turn out to be that heavy or well recorded. So you could still lose on a risk. It was a relative loss, but you knew you were operating in a heavy metal world with the new wave of British heavy metal.
Well, excellent. DJD, the Cult Electric. Oh yeah, that's a great one too. How did you come across that? I just want to know. Spellbound was his first. Yeah, there you go. All right. Oh, I bought Blackfoot Tomcat because I like the cat on the cover.
It literally looked like that. It was an alternate of that, basically. Yeah.
What a great buy. Most were total busts. Well, you know, your mileage may vary. You just kind of have to go with it. But when you're a kid and you're young, you never know. It's just like playing Russian roulette, kind of. You know, it's just kind of fun. All right, let's throw it over to Peter. Peter, you're up. What you got?
Yeah, this is. I haven't got a prop here, but
that's all right. I got graphics.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Grace Under Pressure, which is the Rush album from 1984. Rush in Australia, there was absolutely zero airplay. Nobody had heard a Rush song. I mean, it seems so inconceivable for people in Northern America or the UK that in the Southern Hemisphere, they could barely get arrested. But anyway, I used to see a lot of the Rush album covers or in the bins. And I actually bought a cassette of Grace Under Pressure, and the one thing I bought on the album cover was the Hugh Syme album cover, which is kind of like a science fiction. I love science fiction. I love Isaac Asimov. I like Philip K. Dick. I used to read a lot of those sort of genre novels, and it had a sort of a science fiction-y type of album cover, like you've got an alien looking at an icy storm, a different planetary world. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. So I bought the cassette. It was about $10. Whacked it into the portable cassette player, and loved it. It was sort of like I gravitated to the sounds. It was very Police sounding, because they were going through their synth Police meets a little bit of U2 phase or Simple Minds. I love Distant Early Warning, The Body Electric. And this album basically set me off on the journey of Rush. But yeah, as I said, in Australia, we knew nothing about Rush. And this is definitely one which was just a cold purchase on the basis of an album cover. And it was like a science fiction connection. And that's about it. And, by accident, set me off on a journey of exploring the catalog of this great band.
So did you pick that up like when this came out when you were a kid?
I think it would have been around that time. It was about 1984. When would it have been? I can even remember the month. It would have been about October 1984. So
I'm just curious, Peter, how was Rush? How were they perceived over in Australia at the time?
Zero. Unless you, when I started to go to metal gigs, you saw a couple of the metalheads would be wearing Rush back patches.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the only folk I would see that would be into Rush. Those that like a little bit of hard rock, but zero airplay. I've only heard one Rush song on radio, and that was Time Stand Still, and that's it. I've never seen a Rush film clip on any of the video shows.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely zero media exposure.
Wow. Well, there you go. All right, cool. Excellent. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, brain salad surgery. I wonder how many kids back in the day had no idea about ELP, but bought that record. I mean, Justin, that's a good example.
Yeah, perfect.
Stephen Schneese here. 75% of every album I bought between 78 and 85 was a crapshoot based on the album cover or the names listed in the credits. That's how I got in. Sorry, Peter, I didn't mean to block your whole face. That's how I got into my power pop, new wave, synth pop, post punk bands. 75%. All right, excellent. Thanks for the comment. Tom Catton was a Black Panther. Justin, I agree. The ELP is well. Come on, think of all the Emerson, Lake and Palmer albums. That is,
works.
Other than
Love Beach.
Other than Love Beach.
Yeah,
that would scare me.
Yeah,
Bee Gees.
Between the Eagles is the track. Okay. Oh. Really curious to see how many people.
That's a great example. Yeah, that's one of those where people thought they were getting something pretty heavy, and they weren't even really getting even heavy Southern rock when they got that.
But the artwork on those records, you have to admit,
Yeah.
Still stands up. Great stuff. Great.
It's the Meatloaf syndrome, right? Meatloaf is like the shining example of a super heavy metal album cover, and it's not heavy. Right?
Oh, Marlon's got a question for you, Peter. What was it like exploring their old stuff from where you started?
Well, I was sort of gravitating in that 80s era. So I was going maybe a couple of years back, a couple of years forward in the 80s. It took me a long time to get into the 70s. And that was like, wow, this is like a different, completely different band. But yeah.
Yeah, but it's just amazing. I'm always just curious about, it's like Styx was only popular here in the States and never anywhere else. I was just always curious how Rush was perceived.
Yeah, Styx only had one hit, Babe, the power ballad.
What about Roboto?
Really,
because we just did a show on Roboto.
Maybe.
Was a Roboto hit over there?
I have a vague memory of Sail Away. That may have been a little bit of a minor hit. Yeah, Come Sail Away. But Babe, that was the hit.
All right. So my final. Now, if anyone knows me, this all comes back to Cheap Trick. Every show that I do or have been on, I always mention Cheap Trick. And tonight I'm going to mention Cheap Trick one more time. When I was a kid, this album, they had like the promo poster in the store. They had this in the bin. And again, it was me and my buddy, because that's all we did. We drove our bikes out to the mall. We'd go to the record stores. We'd go through the bins. And we were just looking for anything that looked cool. Now, I mentioned Cheap Trick. But this is my gateway drug was Cheap Trick Heaven Tonight. Now I looked at the cover and I said, wow, this is just kind of odd. Who are these two guys? It's almost like a Sparks album cover. It's very strange, but they look cool as hell. Look, Robin Zander looks like $1 million. Tom Peterson looks like $1 million. You flip it around and you've got the two weird guys on the back. So we were totally capped. It was like, what is this? It just seemed like the most illogical thing to buy, but we just felt that it had to be cool. And of course it was cool. This is probably the best Cheap Trick album in the catalog, but that would be my fifth one. It made a big impact and I still love it. So there you go, kids. It all comes back to Cheap Trick.
Or the Beatles.
Yeah, but it's just
you
know what I'm saying. Or the Beatles.
I just wanted to mention, I was thinking of Rush because I had the debut as a new release and thinking, not crazy about the front cover or the back cover. The guys didn't look particularly rocking. The song titles weren't particularly rocking. And then I don't even remember having much of a strong reaction to Fly By Night. And Caress of Steel, logically, I would have a strong reaction to, but I don't remember anything about that. But definitely, 2112 looked like an evil metal album with a big pentagram on it, right? Which they've had to live down ever since, right? The whole idea of a pentagram. I mean, it looked really evil, right? And then the guys on the back looked like they're out for business as well, sort of thing. So yeah, Rush was a funny one. They're no real album cover connection for me, in terms of this show.
I think my first Rush album was Hemispheres, but I remember like in the early 80s, late 70s, we played Caress of Steel constantly. So, I've been on shows where people trash Caress of Steel, but in my heart, it'll always be in my heart because you always think back to when you're a kid. A lot of those records that really made those first impressions, you can't, they're always there.
That album cover reminds me of BTO1, right? I mean, they're both like very metal, very, very made out of metal sort of thing, stamp metal for that Caress of Steel and BTO1. Like, what's more metal than that super long band name, a cog, and then you turn on the back, turn it over, and the guys are looking like truckers, basically, right? So, that one definitely had that, okay, this is probably going to be heavy feel to it.
Hey, the good doctor's here. Welcome, Dr. Funkenstein. I call him Funkenstein. I've never heard, I can't even pronounce it. Funkronomicon by Axiom. Funk? Yeah. Never heard of it, the good doctor. He's always throwing stuff out there you've never heard of. But Byron's here in the chat, and he wants to mention Love Beach. Now, I know, Byron, you must be just pulling our legs, because I know you're not. No. What was he beyond disappointed when he found out it was Southern Rock?
Or are we talking about BTO?
Or Molly Hatchet.
Because BTO I've recently called a few times the most Southern rock album ever by a band who's not from the South. In fact, they're from Canada, of course, right? So
here's a good one. ELO, Out of the Blue. Yeah,
I was going to almost pick an ELO one.
Yeah.
But if you're a kid, think about if you're like a kid and you're going through the bin. Are you going to buy Out of the Blue? It's a double record. It costs more than the others.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have had the money for that, but that's a great cover. I will. David Caress of Steel. There you go. The Good Doctor. Any Slayer album.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
There you go.
Yeah. Very evil. Venom was like that too. Venom scared us, those album covers, because they were really evil, but they were really crude too at the same time.
I'm still scared of those.
Yeah.
I was late to Rush. My first listen to Rush was New World Man. Well, better late than never.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Martin, what's your favorite Max Webster cover?
Wow, they really don't have good covers, do they? I would have to say Mutiny Up My Sleeve would probably be the best one. Yeah, they're terrible album covers. You think about it, eh? Yeah, really bad.
Oh, here we go. Martin, what's your favorite Rush cover?
Rush cover. Wow. Moving Pictures pretty cool. Yeah, but Permanent Waves is pretty awesome too.
Permanent Waves is my #1 favorite.
I remember a Farewell to Kings. We were kind of spooked out by that one with the marionette king there, and then not happy that it was kind of less heavy than 2112 was, right? But that was a very regal, spooky, creepy, intriguing sort of album cover, and being a gatefold and being so fancy inside with the guys looking like really queen-like, aristocratic, right?
Right.
I like Presto. Right. I like the rabbits.
Yeah, that's a good one too, but I think Permanent Waves was a crowning achievement. That still stands up. It's just like a I don't know. Of course, I love Permanent Waves, so I love everything about it. So here we go. Taken by Force. And kids, we're going to wrap this up shortly. Taken by Force by the Scorpions a little bit. Heard a couple of the songs before. Yeah, there. Well, that's a good one.
Didn't the Scorpions go into salacious territory a few times? Gee whiz.
Yeah, but those covers never made it. Those are all European covers, though. So, they're a little bit. That won't fly over here. Of course, Marco, Wizard's Brew. Yeah, loved it, but not really having it look super heavy. Yep, Wizard's Brew, great one. Yep. BTO, CCR, and Foghat, all trying to out-southern the South.
Exactly. Yeah. Good one, David. Yeah, for sure.
That's a good one, David.
Yeah.
Got into Grand Funk from the Red Album, became a fan, saw them in 71. First rock concert in life as a fan. Very nice.
Yeah. And David, I must say, Grand Funk and Foghat both did not have very good album covers in total, right?
What you mean? What was Survival? You don't think Survival was a good cover?
Yeah.
Okay.
Grand Funk. Yeah. Oh dear.
I'm not a Grand Funk guy. Don't even get me started.
Yeah.
Max Webster. I don't mind Universal Juveniles. I think that's okay.
Huh.
I don't know.
It's goofy.
Maybe. If you look at Universal Juveniles, do you think it looks heavier than it is?
No, it doesn't look heavy at all. No.
Okay.
And of course, it's also like playing into the if you want people to think that Max Webster is the name of a person, stick one guy on the front of your album cover, right?
All right, Martin, we got another one for you. Martin, what was your favorite Maiden cover?
Man, I would probably say Peace of Mind. Derek muted it back on the colors. They were a little less primary color, just more green and black sort of feel to it. I like that.
I love that Somewhere in Time. I think that's a magnificent album cover. There's so much detail.
Is there a Maiden album that's not? What would be the worst Maiden cover?
Fear of the Dark.
X Factor, Virtual 11. Yeah.
You guys are. Yeah, he was skinny. Grand Funk album is a Robo Man. Oh no. What was the heaviest album cover? The heaviest album cover of the 70s.
Good question, I would go for I would say there's some interesting live ones, Grand Funk live album or live, whatever it's called. But Motorhead Overkill, because it actually is possibly the heaviest album of the 70s, but that's a pretty heavy album cover. But so who's rocking out in a live situation or looking the most badass as a bikerish band on an album cover in the 70s? The Boys were Too Wild to Tame.
What about the first Gods album?
Yeah, that's pretty heavy looking. Well, actually, the second one even looks heavier. The second
one's even heavier.
Yeah, but it's not heavier. Nothing is sacred, right? That's pretty.
I'd go Machine Head. I think that's a really outstandingly
70s?
heavy album cover.
Burn is pretty heavy looking.
Yes.
How about Sabbath Bloody Sabbath?
There you go. That's yeah. There was a lot of great ones in the 70s.
Definitely not Sabotage though.
No.
Here, All the Women in the World Beware is bad. Yeah, they had some bad covers. Yeah. Marco loves Grand Funk, though I'm gonna disregard that statement. Stephen Shee, I didn't care for the cover of the album by Grant Arthur and the Yodeling Frogs, so I never bought it. Well, yeah, That wasn't a very good album. In fact, I never mentioned that record. I'm a bit embarrassed about it.
That didn't chart in Australia, Stephen.
Yeah, it did not. Terry White, the animated. No. Yeah, the artwork. I think the inner artwork of that record's cool.
That's right. Yeah,
there were
some good illustrations in there that would have been better. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right, I'll just try to whip through these. We are a minute. We're in an hour and 5 minutes in. We're trying to keep this down to an hour. Megadeth has great covers, but we've got a lot of great. There are people just, oh my God, we've got a lot of great stuff here.
That was the bad CGI one, Dance of Death.
Brain Salad Surgery. Absolutely. Terry's on board with that.
Yeah.
The Good Doctor, Megadeth.
Yeah.
Oh, Bat Out of Hell. I was out with my friend Don earlier today. And he's not here, but he mentioned this. He said, when I was a kid, we saw that Bat Out of Hell cover. And I thought it was definitely a metal cover.
Yeah.
And then he bought it and was so disappointed. Think about how much. Give me another album heavier than Bat Out of Hell.
Yeah, that is a great heavy, absolutely one of the heaviest album covers for sure. Yeah.
And then to buy that sight unseen.
Yeah.
And hear what I'm not saying that's a bad album. But
Analog Kid is asking what is your favorite AC/DC cover? I always make fun of AC/DC, Def Leppard, and Foreigner as having some of the worst album covers going. But I remember I definitely bought, I could have used it as an example here. I bought Let There Be Rock. Didn't know anything about the band as an album cover, but I was not thinking this doesn't look particularly heavy. They look pretty calm on the front cover. There's this one guy. The song titles are okay. One of them says Boogie. The logo didn't even look like a great logo. It was kind of old looking, right? Kind of like it looked like it was 5 years behind the times. That red AC/DC logo. So, but yeah, bought it and then it did turn out pretty heavy.
Yeah. Wishbone. Oh, this is wait a minute. Wrong button, kids. Wishbone Ash, Angus. That's a good cover.
Argus. Yeah.
One, I said Angus. Hey, we're live, kids. We're bound to screw up. All right, here we go. William wants to know your favorite Gillan cover.
Yeah, they weren't the greatest either. Glory Road's terrible. Future Shock's pretty good, but Double Trouble's bad. Magic ain't great. Mr. Universe ain't great. So yeah, you'd pretty almost by default have to go with Future Shock.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that.
Dead Kennedys, Fresh Fruit. Yeah, well, that's a good. Hey, I think the Dead Kennedys had some good album covers.
Yeah.
Oh. Alice Cooper Killer, the whole package.
Oh, for sure.
I'm not that crazy.
Babies too. Wow.
Yeah, but I'm not that crazy about. Well, I guess the whole package. I was never.
He had some good album covers.
I never thought Killer was that great as an album cover, though. But I think all the rest of them, top notch.
Salute to Ernie Cefalu and Pacific Eye and Ear, like they were the American version of a Hypnosis or the counter. They had a lot of great album covers. Pacific Eye and Ear.
Byron's got a good point. Hair of the Dog.
Oh yeah,
one of the best album covers of that era.
Super
here
heavy.
We go. Martin, what's your favorite Priest cover?
Boy, I would say it goes on my favorite Priest album, and that would be Killing Machine / Hellbent for Leather. I think that's just so artistic and cool and understated, but still looks really classy. I love how the colors are understated, that whole idea with the busted glasses. I think it's just absolutely iconic. I remember as kids, we used to think, because it was the time of disco, right? Stained Class has a total disco album cover. But yeah, and I remember, so Sight Unseen, Sad Wings of Destiny, first Priest we ever tried. And I remember finding that and thinking this album cover looks kind of like almost, it's too nice and too almost religious. And then Rob Halford's holding the mic stand up like that. Looks kind of religious. All the writing's religious. All the song titles are timeless and kind of religious. And we're thinking, is this a Christian rock album? And then you get it, and it turned out to be one of the best heavy metal album since heavy metal started, basically. But yeah, thinking there's some problems with this one. This does not look that great. We're gonna have to wait till we get it back to the stereo to test it out.
All right, kids, we're gonna wind this up. I'll give Martin one more question. Martin Popoff, favorite Kiss album cover?
That would probably have to go on my favorite Kiss album too, and that would be Destroyer. Thinking that was an amazing album cover.
Yeah.
You know, again, illustration. You know, pioneering that idea of illustration that was so big in the new wave British heavy metal. But they looked like absolute world conquerors because they were literally stomping a city to rubble. You know, oversized, big, floating in the air, looking really cool. Way more muscles than they actually had. But yeah, I thought that was a great cover.
I think No Mean City's a great cover too.
Yeah.
They had Nazareth had some great artwork.
Yeah.
You have to admit.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go, well, I like Rock and Roll Over too. It's kind of like a toss up for me because I think Rock and Roll Over, even to look at it today, it seems very refreshing. It's timeless. A lot of those Kiss album covers, well, you know, there are. I think Destroyer, I would probably give the nod to Destroyer. I think it's great. Tanks, Honor and Blood, a longtime favorite. All right, well, we probably should wind this up. Anybody have anything else to add before we wind her down?
No, I think we covered all the bases.
I think we did.
Yep.
We all want to thank. Thanks everybody for showing up tonight and contributing. We've had a great turnout tonight. So what we're going to plan on doing, this is kind of like a test episode to see if we want to do this again. So we're going to talk about it. I think this was very successful. What a lot of fun just to keep it loose and talk about albums and just album artwork. I don't think I have anything more to add. Martin, Peter, anybody?
I don't think so. We semi talked about, you know, making this a weekly thing and making it kind of album cover based. So if we can come up, anybody have any good album cover ideas, concepts, let us know over at the Facebook page or, you know, join our Patreon situation. Let us know there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We also have a Ko-fi. You can join that way. We like donos too. If we're going to continue doing these live things, we much would appreciate a dono because we do this out of love. We do this out of the music. You know, we're not getting rich off of it, but there's so much passion here on the Contrarians that this is why we do it. So if you want, you also can leave a comment down in the comments on this one and, you know, we'll come up with something for the next show. So, all right, gentlemen, without any further ado, let's wrap this one up.
All right.
And thank you. And thanks everybody for showing up.
All right. Thanks, guys.
There we go.
Bye-bye.